We are perfectly live right now. Where are you guys based at the moment? How's the situation? Let's start with the lady, Anna.
Hello, everyone. I'm based in Paris, doing fine. Locked in my apartment, basically.
Very cool. And I'm Anders. I'm based in Copenhagen. We have a little bit more flexibility, so I could actually might make my way to the office. I'm here with two other people, so we are within the 5 people limit set by the government, and also doing okay.
Great.
Yeah, back in Riga, right? So last week I was in Copenhagen. This week I'm in Riga. So I actually one of the few people who keeps flying, limited range, but at least I keep flying, which means that I live in self-isolation on an ongoing basis. But I don't find too much difference between self-isolation and no isolation these days in our lives. So it's okay.
I'm happy that you are feeling mentally well, Cristobal. And so let's just get on with it. For those of you who are tuning in right now, my name is Stoyan. I'm a productivity coach and a co-author of the book Perform, the Unsexy Truth About Startup Success. I'm here with my co-author, Cristobal, and a couple of the founders who we featured. We found having interesting and relevant examples and stories and featured in the book along with 50 other founders. We're here with Anna Stepanoff and Anna Thomsen, CEOs and founders of their own companies. And before we get into the discussion about today's topic, which is effective planning, I would like to give you guys the word to introduce yourself. So let's start with the lady once again. Anna, would you tell us more about who you are and what do you guys do with Wild Code School?
Sure, thanks, sir. So I'm Anna Stepanoff. I founded Wild Code School 7 years ago. Basically, this is a school that teaches technical skills to adults who would like to change jobs, careers, and who don't have lots of time. So our trainings, they last for 5 months. They are very intensive, and they are in partnership, mostly done in partnership with companies, so that students who learn technical skills, they really learn the most up-to-date skills, and then they can go and work after the training. And currently we have campuses in several European countries, a lot of them in France, but also in Germany, in Spain, and some others. And we trained in this past year more than 1,000 students, just to give you an idea of our scale.
Great. Anas?
Very cool. Yeah, so I'm Anders. I'm the CEO and CTO and co-founder of No More Hours. I have a background as a management consultant. I'm also a self-taught programmer, so I will probably have benefited from going through one of your schools, Anna. I also had a chance to work in private equity for a short while as an investment manager before I started No More. No More or No More Hours has a purpose of helping particular management consultants or business professionals with their PowerPoint slides, saving them time on visualizations and helping them make more impactful slides. We've been around for 5 years. We have 30 people across our offices in Copenhagen, Portugal, and now also starting up in Mexico City. We serve clients from all around the world, and we do many hundred thousands of PowerPoint slides for these guys every year.
Thank you, Anas. And if you can ask the guys in the office if they could be a little bit more quiet, because we hear in the microphone. I can see you guys are working. So, Cristobal, last but not least, let us have a little bit of your story for the viewers who don't know you.
Yep. So, co-author with Stoyan of the Perform book. I'm the CEO, El Patron in Startup Wise Guys. We probably today the largest or the most active early stage investor in Europe. We did more than 80 investments last year, and accelerating companies mostly from the New Europe, Baltics, CE, and CIS. Personally, the funny part talking about planning is I used to be the head of planning or the vice president of planning or whatever you want to call it, planning in a mobile operator more than 15 years ago. So I consider myself a planning geek, even if people that knows me will say, I'm planning are two different things. So always very interesting to talk about the topic and see how also planning is needed when we're scaling, which is one of the things that not only we look in our portfolio, but Wise Guys today have gone from 5 people to 35 people. We have presence in 6 countries physically, and more to come. So I think planning becomes a key skill, especially when everybody's working remotely. And you will hopefully touch a lot of these challenges overall growing, but also within the current environment of COVID. I think it has making it even more interesting. How do you do planning sessions on mirror boards and things like that? When before you just were used to go into the same room with a board, and how our creativity and capacity to share that is impacted, right? So I think it's a super interesting moment to talk about these things.
Thank you, Cristobal. And before we get into the discussion, I want to remind everybody who's tuning in for the first time, this is the second Perform panel discussion about effective planning. Just like every time, we would like to give away a few books for those of you who ask a question, and we feature the question. So please, if you have a question about effective planning, a story that you want these founders to share with you, drop a comment and we'll make sure to take as many questions. And Cristobal, to the thing that you started talking about, why is it important for a founder to be really, really good in planning? You know, a lot of founders, they're just all about doing things, right? And you've seen, you've invested now with Startup Wise Guys in over 250 companies. You've seen, hundreds and thousands of founders. Why do you think founders should plan effectively?
Yeah, we use this sentence, right, in the book, they bringing the future into the present, right? That's kind of what planning is all about, right? I think on the very early stage of companies, we have limited resources. So it's everything about what you don't do, right? So if you don't plan it, people will do whatever they think they should be doing, and not will be aligned on what are we doing, right? So to me, planning is at the beginning is mainly about deciding what we are not going to do, and then making sure that we're all working in the same direction. I think as you grow, is basically a lot about the allocation of resources. Is to make sure that you don't become a big company in which any new task needs a new people, any new process needs a new department, right? So how do we effectively keep using resources, and how do we make sure that we have people basically as effective as possible? And then, how you will touch before, when plan doesn't go according to plan, what do we do about it, right? So what is the key thing of startups when they scale is not to lose their capacity to execute. The problem with many companies growing is they lost their ability to execute quick, right? And the thing, and I was talking to my department yesterday, one of the departments is like, oh, can we do this? I said, oh, it will take 3 weeks. And I said, does it take 3 weeks because the task takes 3 weeks, or because you have many other things to do? Because I want to make sure that we keep still executing 1 week or in 2 days or in 1 day, whatever we need. It's more about, do we set the priority on doing it or not, right? So to me, it's making sure that we don't lose our capacity to execute quickly, and that we can decide what are the trade-offs of what not to do to, let's say, anticipate or not anticipate any tasks that we're doing in the company.
Anna, what about yourself? I know you from the interview you gave to the Perform book, and I remember for you also mentioning how important it's always to be on top of things with planning. When did you start to be consistent with your sort of like a process of planning, and what do you do actually to make sure that the priorities are really kept in place?
Yeah, this is a very important topic for me. I think I'm not bad at this, even though I'm always trying to improve, and I don't think we do have the perfect system right now. Like every time I see ways to improve it and I'm not satisfied, I think it needs to change. Like the system you plan things in a company needs to evolve with the size of your company. So you don't plan the same way when you're a very small company, when you are getting bigger and bigger, and when you have 100 people, when you have more people, like you change your ways of doing it. So I totally agree with Cristobal on the fact that planning is a lot about what we don't do, like what we don't need to do, because we all the time we have great ideas. Like everyone in the team has great ideas every day. And it's very important to find some way of kind of finding out what are the ideas we need to do, like things we need to do, and what are things that are not important and we shouldn't do. And that's where planning comes in. There is also another important reason why we need to plan is how we make things happen. Because like we can have great ideas, like kind of dreams. Usually when you are a founder, you create a startup, you have a vision, like you start, like that's the way I started, like have this vision. You want something to do something great, you might be very ambitious, and then there is this huge question: how do I get there? Like it's so far, it's so huge. And probably know this proverb: how do you eat an elephant? Like an elephant is huge. The answer is you eat it in pieces. And that's what planning is. There is another expression that I like quite a lot, is that goals are dreams with deadlines. So that's like, I really love it, because like you can do everything, but you just need to set a deadline and split it into pieces. So that's the principle, the core of planning for me. Then how you do it, I said in the beginning that it changes over the time. So in the very beginning, when I was alone, maybe when we were a very small team, I think the planning was maybe kind of less important in general. It would take less time. It could be oral. We were probably in the very beginning not necessarily writing down all the things. We could just talk in the morning to get aligned, and then at some point draft some kind of thoughts, some kind of action plan, some kind of business plan. But it was done quite quickly. I think I didn't spend lots of time on this. And later, like maybe 5 years into doing this, when I had 100 people in my team, then planning became much more important, and it started taking lots of time. Actually, when we started having processes of planning, so at some point, to some extent, kind of it can be frustrating, because as a person, as a founder, you're with all this kind of approach of startup being quick and efficient, can be disappointing to spend so much time just drafting those plans. You just feel like we just need to keep on going and doing things. But it's also important because it gets people aligned. So actually, I feel like my time is spent more and more, maybe unfortunate, it's unfortunate maybe, but that's the reality right now, on making people aligned. So doing less myself, but just making sure everyone is aligned. So defining some kind of key goals based on the global vision, then key goals maybe for a year. And then the key goals, it's like 3 words. I'm trying to keep it very simple. In the book, you said that I like simple words, and it's true also for planning. Like for me, it's very important that goals are simple, easy to visualize, easy to memorize, like easy to put on paper, to share, so that everyone can easily remember them. If somebody on the team at some point tells me, hey, what are our goals for the year? And if they are not able to come up quickly with those 3 keywords, it's probably there is a problem. Probably it was not enough of communication. So like the initial step is about setting those key goals. And then the second step would be to split them into kind of more operational objectives. Like, for example, in the business of schools, it's how many students we would like to have this year or this semester. And for this, how many people do we want to reach in terms of our events, because this is a way of reaching out to many people, and some of them then will become students. Another very important objective for us is the job placement rate for our students. So we define those key important indicators, KPIs, based on, I think, business model and key areas of the funnel of our students, prospects, then candidates, then students, and then alumni. And so we have those few KPIs, and those are our operational objectives. And they are defined, in our case, on a semester basis. So we have those 3 keywords, like bigger goals for a year, then semester-based operational objectives, and then we function on a quarter-based projects. So every team member define key 3 to 4 projects that they will be working on a particular quarter, in a particular quarter. And again, here, for me, it's very important that these things are easy to remember. So everyone has to define them. We need to get agreed. So I need to validate them. And then everyone shares those things. And people work on those specific projects. And then in the end of the quarter, they would we will review all the projects, what we've done, what we haven't done, why we haven't done, etc. So this is like a hierarchy of objectives, right? Yearly, big objectives, then more operational or semester-based, quarter, more project-based. And then we have very kind of smaller things on a daily basis. But this is more on my level, I would say. This is more, everyone is managing themselves their to-do list. So I'm not doing micromanagement. So I'm not checking what people do every day. I'm more working with quite autonomous people, and I like to have confidence in them. But myself, I have a kind of ongoing to-do list, for example. So every day I add things to this list. I use a Google document actually for this. I've tried several tools, but I figured out that the simplest for me is just a Google document where I just add lines, and they can structure them in some categories. And then finally, well, I do things, then I erase them from the list, and then things add up, etc. But I do not necessarily review every day the whole list. More like I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking in my head, what should I do today? So for me, it's a lot of in kind of visualizing things. And usually priorities are there on my mind from the very morning. And things that are not important, they stay on paper. And sometimes it's okay if they stay just on paper. So I will stop there because I've talked for quite a lot already.
Anna, thank you so much for several really important points. As Cristobal and Anna know, this is one of my favorite areas to explore. One thing that came to mind while you were speaking about this was, actually, I mentioned this in the book. Usually when I do a workshop on planning, on productivity, or have a one-on-one session in companies, somebody will come and say, yeah, but Stoyan, I don't have time to plan my time. We're just so busy. And I think this is like, yeah, of course you don't have time to plan your time because you do not plan your time. It's a paradox. And it's about really prioritizing the time to, as you said, to set the objectives, to define the priorities, and to make sure that everybody is aligned and they know exactly what is their ownership, what are the deadlines, who should they go to, like what is the kind of the structure around this specific project or a task. And then we aligned and we know what to do, but it also gives us answers about what not to do. So I think it's a really, really great several points that you mentioned, Anna. And one thing that's also kind of interesting to me is you mentioned that you're planning kind of a priority for you to plan has been evolving and maybe reached a point after 4 or 5 years. I'm curious about Anna's because, he's coming from McKinsey. He's been doing all those kind of things. Was it the same for you with the growth of your startup? Did you start early on to prioritize, to plan, or how was the evolution for you?
Really good question. Yeah, so it definitely changed a lot throughout the years. We did start out, very biased by my background with having, even though we were a super small team, we had work streams and we had almost like steer codes or advisory board meetings with a certain frequency, and we were being, very, how can you say, like by the book consulting, like in the way we were thinking about these things. So I think in that way we kind of, probably started where most big company ends. And I think in many ways, I think that was a big mistake on our end. I think what would have been more beneficial for us is to have a much shorter time horizon, and then probably instead of thinking about all the potential things we can do in parallel with all the great work streams and all the people we could get in, what we would have benefited more from is being like that was also pointed out a few times, being much more selective. And I think to some extent we were a little bit the victims of this idea of not really saying no that much, but just more saying yeah, that's also a great idea, and then just try to find more people and push ourselves more to just do more things, instead of really being considerate about where we put our time. Yeah, so the short answer, we started out in this sort of we almost started out like in the C20 kind of planning setup with multi-year forecasts and long projects and time horizons and so on, and then over the last years we kind of changed to a more, I think, I'm almost not gonna, I don't like saying the word agile, but I guess that is kind of what we are doing by having planning horizon that's only 3 months at a time. So we're following the sort of the OKR approach more and more, and are taking shorter decisions basically in terms of how we allocate time. But then we spend more time about being very, very particular about the things we do and the things we don't do. So we've definitely been on a journey.
Yeah, and we have several questions coming in. Let's just give a shout out to Andreas, who's saying hello. Katrina is saying hello as well. Somebody is saying, Anna, the objective approach sounds reasonable. Your broadcast has attracted 10 watchers. We should get more on the channel. Keep them coming, guys. That's what I'm going to say. And let's take maybe a couple of questions coming from the audience. The first question is, again, from a LinkedIn user. We'll see who that is afterwards. So the question is, how much time is needed to plan a startup from idea to operational business? Me and my team of developers would need to get in business within 4 weeks, meaning having paying customers to ensure our run rate.
I can start answering, and maybe you can complete. I think it can take a few hours to several months. It really depends the details that you want to have in your plan, but I would definitely not recommend spending several months. I mean, I think it's possible to have a decent startup business plan done in maybe like in a few days. If you are skilled in particular in doing this, you have some kind of, for example, consultancy background can help, but definitely you don't want to spend like weeks and weeks on this, because like for me, the startup business plan evolves all the time. So you really need to start doing and planning and replanning all the time. So, for example, just to give you a very short example, when I started, I didn't necessarily have a plan, very clear plan in the beginning. So I just wanted to do something, and I really believed it. And it was more like a call, like I really wanted to do this thing, and I believed in it. So I just started doing it with the least of costs possible. So just for low cost, not paying myself, paying no one actually, trying to make it happen, bootstrapping. And then when I saw that it was kind of getting some traction, Then I started developing some business plans. And in the beginning, it was so hard to imagine how it could go. So I remember having multiple scenarios. So don't go into too many details. And in the beginning, it's very possible, I think, to function with few hypotheses, being just reasonable. So a few days can be enough. That's my answer. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, two things. I think you are doing the wrong thing because if you need in 4 weeks means you want to pay your salary and means you're having the wrong objectives. You cannot run a company to pay your salary, at least at the beginning. You need to do it because you have a passion to solve a problem. But skipping that part, I think you only need two things. One is you have 3 milestones. Get the MVP, start sales, close contract. And then you have to run a sprint every morning for maximum 30 minutes to say, what are we doing today? Because you only have 4 weeks. You plan every day for about half an hour. You, at the end of the day, summarize and go, and you have, in 5 days, we have to do the MVP. That's the only thing you guys have to be doing, right? So it's planning every morning in a sprint model and having very clear 3 key milestones in 1 month. And that's it. Then if you're alive, you can start thinking about other type of planning, etc. But again, if you only have 4 weeks and it's to pay your salary, I will not waste your time. I will keep your job and wait until you can do 3-4 months at least, and then start again, because then you can really build the right thing.
Yeah, if I can continue on that, I definitely agree with the time frame seems very, to be honest, quite unrealistic. I think if I was in your shoes, I would. I mean, let's say you're aiming for these 4 weeks. I think you have to spend a lot of time talking with customers. So you have to know exactly what are they willing to pay for. And then I think I would actually try to either get them either part of the sprints or get them really close involvement for the clients. And then ideally you want them to prepay before the thing is ready. If this is like really what you want to secure revenue in 4 weeks, I think, assuming it's a B2B product, then getting them, because they like you and know you and trust your vision and your background and stuff like that, getting to prepay you for the work you're doing and get them as part of the process. I think to me that's like the only realistic, way to get to that.
Yeah, I completely understand. Maybe a way to do it is running Google Sprints methodology, which basically in 5 days you can be testing functionality with customers, and that also serves as a pre-sale to the customer, as maybe a way to do it in that way also, that involve research, delivering the first kind of real, tested with customers, ask for prepayment, build again, right?
Yeah, and of course you can give like big discounts on all that stuff to get them motivated and all that, and they can have a harder influence on it. But I would definitely spend given that you have a team of developers, I think some of you have to be the salesperson in this for it to make it realistic and get out there and figure out, what are people willing to pay for.
Great. Another question, which I think is also quite relevant for many, especially early stage founders, is coming again from LinkedIn. How do you effectively plan time for prototyping phase when you need to try a lot of different things, sometimes ending up starting everything all over again?
But why do you assume you need to do a lot of things? You need to basically test one thing at a time, because if not, you don't understand the results, right? So to me, goes into the opposite: is plan one thing, execute, test, get feedback, start again, right? So to me, it's don't try to do too many things at the same time, because then you don't understand what is working or what is not working. As with understandability, you always need to get customer feedback. So try one thing, get feedback, one thing, get feedback. And once you start getting enough feedback, then you can plan which of those things you're going to execute over time and plan those more effectively, right? So to me, the key thing is do one thing well, get feedback, do it again, get feedback. You don't have resources for more.
Yeah, and actually, I think one thing that a mistake we definitely did was that we did not spend enough time on the get feedback and talk to clients part. And I think a lot of people, especially like people with developer backgrounds or more introverted people, like myself to some extent, they will have a tendency to prefer the building part over the speaking to clients and you're getting feedback from them. So I think that definitely worth stressing as well. And I really like we actually did the Google sprints that you mentioned, Cristobal. I think that is a really good methodology for getting things out there and making it real. Especially then just clearing your calendar and then just don't do anything but that for a week. I think that definitely is a great tool.
There's a question that's similar. So Amandus Slap says, my team has a similar challenge for coding and UI. Currently, we're at max 3 months for prototyping and testing with clients. Too long time for fast markets.
1 week. All you need is 1 week. Get feedback 1 week, get feedback. 3 months, you cannot run anything in 3 months. It's a large company, right? So
yeah, I agree. I mean, then if the coding is what keeps you back, then just do the UI. Start up Figma. Do some rough UIs, and then show that to the clients, and then you'll get a sense of where in the right direction. So just less time on coding might help you. Do the prototypes faster.
I remember I did an interview with Victoria Vasilenko. She's also one of the founders we featured in the Perform book. And what she shared is she built an MVP web page for 4 hours, and then she went out and she landed her first customer. And then she stayed for this for 4 or 6 months because she was busy. She got a few more customers. And she was like, don't waste so much time trying to code and to build something before actually if people want it and need it. So definitely some really, really good points. We have a question from Maria. Do you or your team take any online trainings to make sure you stay sharp, especially during this pandemic?
is that for us or that's in general?
That's a question to the three of you guys.
You
guys.
Well, I think the question goes beyond online, right? Is do we prioritize trainings on our own teams? And I think this is one of the cases in planning. Everybody's so busy, and your own team is not learning, right? So we even throw a challenge to our own team right now: is can we learn more from each other, right? I have 35 people. There is so many good skills. Hey, how do you moderate a panel? Let's run a session on it, right? So right now we started this every fourth Friday, 4 hours of training in which people, volunteers, I want to teach something, talk about something, or learn about something. And then we search, and in the learn about something, it might be time for you to go to an online training because you never find time, right? So to me, our priority as CEOs is to make people sure that they have time, that they know that they can take some time to do the trainings, that they can take some time to keep improving, that not everything is execution, because we are looking ahead. We're just not looking at tomorrow, right? And for sure, online now is the way to go, right? So asking for Marie. So me, our role is prioritize time for our people to be able to train, and two, make sure that there is cross-pollination of knowledge in the company and that we make time for that.
But maybe I can add my vision as a training provider, because we thought actually in the beginning of this pandemic that people will have more time to do some online and not just remote trainings. And we even conceived a specific program of very short trainings in the beginning for people staying at home. And actually it didn't work at all. It was like a total failure, because I realized that people were not thinking about this, like at least in the beginning of the pandemic, that they were overwhelmed with all kinds of issues, health problems, thinking about some people were losing jobs, others were not having enough things to do at their jobs, even though they were keeping them. So people were just not mentally free to think about new training. So that was kind of a revelation to some extent for me, that this period was not that good for learning actually. And in my company, we started in the beginning of 2020 an internal training program where people were sharing knowledge through short learning sessions within the company. So those who really knew something would do a workshop on those topics every week. We started it and we stopped it when the pandemic started, because just we realized that people were not open, like when not available mentally for those trainings. So maybe things will change now because people get used to it. But yeah, in the beginning it was difficult. So in general, my observation is that people were less available for online trainings over this period.
Great.
I can share my sort of our quick take on it. So for the particular like online courses, I think we had one case where our HR manager did an online course, but that being said, training and of course being online is everything else at the moment is like a really, really big focus on us. But it's not so much with other providers, but it's mainly things we run in-house. So what we do is that everybody that starts out goes through a 2-week, what we call No More University, where we get to understand the basics of what we do and get really deep in the particular role. So that's one effort. Then we have a relatively strong focus on feedback and one-on-ones. So all managers need to do a monthly one-on-one where development goals and thereby also training and so forth is essential. Then we have what's called weekly or Monday recaps, where we pick a handful of different topics that's been relevant throughout the week, and then a team leader presents a video summary of those and kind of reminds people how things certain works and introduces new features or whatever it might be. And then the last piece of the puzzle to us is that we have retrospectives, so very sort of sprint-oriented elements where we have both in the management team and in the tech team. We have once a week where we talk about what have we learned from the week, along with other things, of course. But then we also talk about did someone learn something else? Did they listen to an interesting podcast? Did they see a new in the tech team in particular, like did someone come across a new technology or a new library or something like that? So it's kind of training is really built into the way we run the companies, but we haven't really given people have not been more busy or been less busy, so we dedicating time to separate online courses has been a very small thing for us.
Right. And let's get back to the topic of strategic planning. Anna already shared some of the ideas. Cristobal, you shared in the book how you're doing strategy sessions, and I think it will be very useful for the listeners to hear some more operationally how you guys structure strategy sessions. How often do you do them? What are some of the agenda items to make sure you have an effective planning session? So Cristobal, maybe let's start with you with that one.
Yeah. So we run two things. I think we try to run an offsite usually in September, so twice a year, but it's a special focus in September about the next year's strategy, in which we kind of spend 2.5 days completely offsite, talking about it. And what we want there is to kind of grab the bigger themes, right? This year we actually did it a bit later. We did it in December, just because there's so much uncertainty that I wanted to have more data points to give to the team. And then we're going to draw 3-4 big topics with about 2 to 3 topics below. And then I ask the different head of departments is, can you build over these your battles, right? So the analysts were talking about OKRs, which is, if these are the 12 strategic goals, what are the 3 that you believe your department is going to contribute the most? And can you drive below deliverables and KPIs, right? So which starts building the quarterly planning, right? So once I have built the strategic and the business plan financially, I need my people to own it, right? And the way to own it is to start defining where are they going to influence, what are the deliverables, and then we, in between that one step forward, that's when we becoming corporate, right? Is we are actually doing capacity planning. So what I'm trying to do is estimate all the large operational key strategic projects, which resources you need, how many people you need, etc., and say, wow, in May we have 150%. Do we hire? Do we prioritize, etc.? And then on the quarterly planning, apart from bringing the deliverables strategies, we go tracking. So what did we track? It was going to happen. What really happened, right? Because one of the key issues that we find in startups is people don't know how to plan. People don't know how to track. And you need to teach them, right? They have never been in big companies. At the maximum, they were doing one project at a time. And then suddenly they find themselves in a 40, 50 people structure with 5 different offices, everybody online. So how do they plan capacity, right? So you need to coach them. First, I think first you say estimate, then you say start tracking your own time and start understanding how you effectively use it. But don't track it only for you, track it related to projects. Because sometimes you say, we started tracking, I would say I did 5 hours on writing a proposal and 3 hours on sending emails. So that's great. You know how you use your time, but how is this related to the projects and to the company, right? So I think there is a big element about how we drive from annual to quarterly to departmental to personal, and our job as management is to make sure that it's all happening and it's flowing. So the last guy in the company understands how they influence the results and they still feel part of this company. The second one is the coaching about how to do it. We cannot assume they know how to do it. They have never been in companies that were doing planning. Most of them have always been entrepreneurs, and it was all about launching the MVP and the first sales, right? Not about coordinating 19 projects across 6 countries. And if you want your people to grow, you are responsible of coaching them in that process, right? So we started mostly with first a big effort on tracking, but you don't want to be the typical annual planning left that nobody cares about next year. You have to go into how do we track, how do we plan better, and how do we prioritize. So the key, I want to do this new project, okay? So we were 100% capacity. Which one are we not doing? Which one are we delaying? Which one are you more efficient at doing than you plan it, right? I think, and we do that quarterly. So I try to do that on the 15th of March, on the 15th of June, so about 15 days before the next quarter, in which we first look at tracking back. What did we do versus what we planned? And then, okay, what is new that we want to incorporate? And then what are we really going to do? And that's kind of and that also, the OKRs, I think what helps really is an accountability and ownership, right? So they know what they can influence, but they know what they're accountable for. Because if not, the moment you start growing, it's always somebody else's fault. And you're going to corporate style, right? And you need to make sure that accountability and ownership remains within people. I think that's what makes a difference in a startup. And you need to make sure in this process of growing, you're not losing that, right? It's not simple, because they don't know, they have never experienced this. Anders has from McKinsey, Anna probably has been in other companies. We have experienced it. Most of our team, they have never experienced an annual planning process. They didn't even know what the hell is this guy talking about. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds. I think in many ways it sounds, relatable to our process in terms of what you guys are doing. I mean, I think we are probably like maybe slightly less structured, and since we don't have the specific dates narrowed down on the calendar, it can only also be the 10th. No, but I think our process is very similar to what you described, Cristobal. We have one annual strategy meeting where we have our investor involved as well, and then what we mainly discuss on that one is like what is the high level topics of the year, and there's normally something like really is it 1 or 2 very sort of high level aspects. So for example, right now one of the topics for this year is that we want to create a foundation for growth in Mexico on the sort of supply side of our company. So that's one of the big topics that we are spending a lot of time on. So and then we have a few other topics, but then I think it's limited down to 3 topics. Of course, that doesn't mean that parts of the organization that has nothing to do with our Mexico setup don't have OKRs and ambitions as well, but we're trying to make it relatively simple in that sort of that strategization, also to make it simple to remember for everybody. But I think other than that, I think our process is very comparable. Now turn the high level topics down to objectives and into key results. Make sure that everybody on the team feels accountable. Make sure that they all have their name next to some key results. Make sure we follow up and track on them. So I think in many ways it relates closely.
Yeah, I can say a few words as well. I think the objectives key results system is great, and it's really the reference today on the market in terms of planning. However, it needs to be adapted to every structure, every company, every stage of the company. So it evolves all the time. So I based on the questions, I see that many people who listen to us, they are more early stage, and it's quite difficult to be very detailed and perfect on this. Like I can tell you, after 7 years running the company, it's still far from the perfect example of the way we would do it. So I think you can always improve, but just do the best you can. Basically, that's what I would suggest. And for me, the role of the CEO is very important in the strategic planning. So at some point, somebody has to define those things, to articulate them, and that's the role of CEO. And people who join the company, they also need to participate, be involved, but there is the CEO who defines the objectives at some point, like the global goals. So just to give you a few examples how it happens at Wild Code School, we have several ways where people can talk strategy. Once a year, we have this global team reunion. Usually it happens in August in a very nice place. Well, physically, if possible. It was not the case this year, but previously we tried to make it also a party for a few days. And at this time, I'm giving a talk, like the CEO talk, just 1 hour talk, to inspire everyone to set those global objectives. But then everyone participates. We, for example, run a hackathon where people from the team work on various topics they can choose, and try to think about a project that we might launch over the upcoming months or years maybe. So that's a very participative part. Then over the year, we have 2 kind of committees internally that help us work on the strategy. One of them is called Wild Vision. It's like a very small group of key people from the team. We meet once a month, and we really just talk key topics, topics that are on the agenda, that are important, and that we want to work on. So we have this kind of freedom there to choose topics we want to work on. The other committee, it's called Wild Guard. It's more like the guardians of wildness, the spirit of the culture. So it's a bit larger committee where people unite, talk every week, and we can we exchange information, things that happen on different teams, and there we can also talk about some strategic things. And myself, obviously, as a CEO, I'm listening to everyone on those different occasions. And when I come up with my talk in August, it's usually based on those various discussions that we had. So I don't just come up with something completely new. It's mostly making clear the vision that evolves through those different discussions throughout a year. So that's how we function now. But I think, again, when you start your company, strategy can change almost every day. So it's okay to kind of be cool on this also, and to not necessarily work too hard on one planning project, because just let it evolve regularly. That's the way to be agile today, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point about the company size. And I think, also given the questions, I think what Cristobal also stressed with the Google sprints and just like focusing on getting that revenue to stay alive. I think in the beginning, that's what you want to do, right? You want the company to exist. And then I think you just need to spend half an hour or something like that per week, just making sure that you only spend time that increases the likelihood of survival. In the end, everything else is kind of wasted.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I just emphasizing that I think on early stage, you need to make sure that you have a vision and then that you're executing, right? That's all it matters, right? And I think the key thing that we want to talk is you need to incorporate planning as a team as part of your process, right? I don't think you need to make too much a strategy, 1 year strategy. You have a vision and then you need to execute. But to execute efficiently, you need to have a process to plan together and to be aligned that every day you're working in the same direction, right? And that's the key thing at early stage. And just answering a couple of the questions there, just to kind of throw it. And launch as fast as you can to get feedback as fast as you can. Stop making perfect products. The key thing is to execute is to have feedback, because you're blind in executing, right? So make sure that you launch as fast as possible. And as soon as you can put something that can get customer feedback, launch it.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one more thing. I think it's important also to know yourself, how you function as a person and how your team can function, because I know that there are people who function really well on the very tight deadlines. Like when you tell this group of people that they need to deliver something in 2 days, they will be very creative and they will deliver and it will be cool. There are other types of people, when you tell them this, they will be so stressed, they will do nothing. So for some, there are other people who need more kind of perspective. They cannot function under those very tight deadlines. So you want them, give them some kind of space. Tell them, okay, we'll need to launch like in a few, like it depends obviously on the project. But for example, I can give you a very specific example. In the beginning of 2020, with the beginning of the epidemics, we decided to launch our remote program. So before we only had trainings on campuses and it was new, but we saw that there was really a very important potential in offering our training remotely. So that was in March. And obviously it would be great to launch it as soon as possible. So what I did was to identify one person on my team who was responsible for the launch of this new product, right? But this person wouldn't function well if I told her you need to launch it by the end of the month. It wouldn't work. It would be a failure, I think. So what we said is that I asked her to tell me how much time she needs to launch. So she spent some time thinking, doing her own planning. She came up with some kind of reasonable timeline. I added more time and I told, okay, we'll launch it in September. So, and that really helped her to have space, time, and be kind of calm in designing, thinking, and being creative and launching it properly. So it really also depends on the type of the person you work with, or yourself, if we're talking about yourself, or the group of people. And yeah, think about this kind of approach on the tight deadlines or not.
And I maybe want to just summarize what you guys were discussing during this session. I think a lot of people get stuck into trying to find the right planning process or method. And yeah, but I don't know if that's the right, what should I? At the end of the day, it's about consistency and it's about getting better with each session. Like frequency of actually creating the space for you and for your team to figure out what are the priorities right now. Are we aligned? What are the core priorities right now? And I love what you, Cristobal, said that at the beginning, it's kind of like you are having a car in the dark. Your lights can go just as far, right? You can't see things in 6 months because it's too early. But again, you need to have something you're after. What are the results? And that's why we also emphasize a lot about results and outcomes. Instead of, we need to focus on this thing, what is the result we are after? What are the concrete results by the end of the week? In 2 days, maybe we'll have a team discussion and we realize we need to move, we need to change direction. But still, it's a lot more productive and efficient if you have already defined clear, specified goals, and that helps the team to focus, to be really focused. So
I agree, but just also complementing something that Anna was mentioning before. We also need to know ourselves, right? So I don't think you can be a CEO in a startup if you're not a bit of a visionary. So you need to be the one driving a vision, right? I think many CEOs can be very visionary and even maybe very efficient planning their own time, but very bad at planning the team time. So I think sometimes we also need to recognize that I'm not good for my team to be the planner, and maybe my CTO has to be the planner. Or so you don't need to be the one driving or facilitating planning sessions all the time. In our case, we have the luxury to now being able to hire a COO, right? And it's a combination. I drive the vision and the strategy, but my COO is facilitating the grounding of it, right? And we back and forth, right? But in an early stage team, maybe your CTO is more real, right? Or your CMO is more real, right? So don't get ego that, because I'm very good at planning my time and I'm very visionary, you need to plan the team. Maybe somebody else in the team has to do that. So keep it always in mind. Just CEO is a title. Do something that you do well, right? And if you are good at vision, usually you're not great at planning, at least planning for the team. Again, don't confuse that to be super efficient at using your own time, which probably most guys are at the beginning because that's what they became, or if they're experienced at least, right?
And maybe final question, Anas, let's just finish with this question and then we kind of wrap up the whole session because the time is going there. How do you personally make sure that you're on top of your own time, having in mind that you have to run a team, but you also have to get things done on your own? So just quickly, briefly, give us some pointers and then we'll wrap up the whole session.
Sure. So how do you ensure that? I think the way I think about it is that in the end, given my role, my outcome and my productivity is the sum of everybody that reports to me of their productivity. So I always have try to have a mindset that says what are the things that I can do that helps the people on my team to get their shit done? Sorry for swearing. So I'm always thinking about, am I in some way the bottleneck on someone else's activities? And I always put those things on top of my list. Because, if I'm blocking someone else for doing something, that's kind of, lost productivity right there. So I always try to move those things up as much as possible. And then besides that, I try to carve out time, very, practically, block my calendar saying, this is something that I really, really need to do because it's a part of my OKR. And if I don't do it, everybody else can work effectively. I block that out. And what I do is every morning I spend 5 or 10 minutes going through. I have a very similar to you, and I also have a very, very long to-do list with it feels like an unending number of items on it. And then I try to spend some time saying which are the things that that is must do right now things, which are the things that can wait a little bit, and then I think about that, and then to actually share it with the entire team. We have a channel where everybody posts their daily to-dos. I said this is what I'm planning on doing. And block the time, and then I get to it. So that's in a very practical way. I think about how to get everybody else rolling and still having time to do a little bit of stuff on my own.
Can I say a few words on this?
Yes, go ahead, and then we wrap it up. I saw you unmute yourself, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to share one understanding that I had some time ago. I realized at some point that I will never do what I need to do at any particular point. I have too many things on my to-do list every day. For example, I can never read all my emails. I'm not talking about structuring, sorting them out. This is not possible physically. It's not possible anymore. So I thought I need to become comfortable with the fact that I will never do everything I want to do. So that's very important, I think, for a CEO, especially if you're ambitious, because you always have those great ideas that add additional things to do. And then I'm totally aligned with you, Anders, on the fact that I think the best way to use my time is to empower people on my team. So try to do the least possible things yourself and help others be the most efficient they can. So that means making things clear to them, working with them on their objectives, and coaching them. So that's always my top priority when there are things to do. And maybe just one last thing on managing my own agenda, the week. I realized at some point that I was getting disturbed all the time, but many people calling me, asking me, writing me emails on Slack and everything. And I had never time just to work on something on a longer, consistently for a few hours. So I decided a few weeks ago to block all my mornings. I don't want interviews, or I don't want meetings. I don't want anything of that. Obviously, it always gets disturbed still, but I'm trying to stick to this as much as possible, and this gives me some extra time actually to go into some deeper points. So that's it.
Deep work, creating space for deep work. Amazing. Guys, it's been such a pleasure having you on the stream. Let's just wrap it up right now with having a quick round of each of you sharing just a few words about how can people find you, find what you do with your companies. And of course, if you can also share with us, why should people get a copy of the Perform book where both of you are featured? And of course, this panel is supported by. So let's maybe start. We started with the lady. Let's finish with the lady. So
that means I go then, or
actually, I mean, let's start again with her. So Anna, let's go with you, and then.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Definitely don't hesitate. I usually accept all the demands. And you can check our website, Wild Code School, if you're interested in tech trainings or interested in hiring people. And then I definitely recommend reading the book, because there are some great pieces of advice, and I think it can really help you gain time and be more efficient, and it's very well written, I would say. So easy read.
Thank you, Anna. Anas.
Very cool. So in terms of where to find us and what we do, I think what to repeat what Anna said, LinkedIn, feel free to connect and write me. Other than that, I think our website, nomorehours.com, is a place to read more about what we do. And particularly if you know someone, great talents in Mexico City that's into project management or design, please let them know about us. We're sort of trying to find almost as many great talents as we can right now. So that would be the shout out from me. Why you should buy the book? I think it's filled with very sort of practical, tangible advice and a lot less bullshit than you find in other sort of startup focused books. I think, and it's filled with a lot of great examples. Also with examples that you don't necessarily read on as commonly on TechCrunch and all the other American media. So you get the more European feel to the companies mentioned there, which I think is kind of cool.
Thanks. And Cristobal, I know there's a new batch that's Wise Guys that's just people can apply to. If you want to shout out.
Yeah, I think basically our website is always up to date. There's a lot of things running. So we are about to start a SaaS batch in April in Tallinn. So applications are open. We will announce a new program in another vertical in the next 2 weeks. But, website is always open, very active on LinkedIn. You can also hit me there. And I like a comment. Actually, I agree with Anders about the European feeling. So it's examples of somebody on the corner of your neighborhood, not in the Silicon Valley, which I think we're tired and it's very difficult to relate to. But I like the comment that Luis shared with us this last week. It's like an operating system, right? So it's the basics of an operating system of what you need to put in place to feel less lost about what do I need to have in place to make sure that our chances to succeed are greater, right? So I like it as an operating, for aspiring founders or even early stage founders, an operating system to guide you that you can always come back to, but with lots of practical examples of people that you can also hit, relate, link to, that might give you real ideas, and it's somebody by you. So if they have done it in the other corner of Riga, of Copenhagen, or Sofia, you can do it.
Yeah, definitely. There's people that are closer to you, founders that are just like yourself, growing up in the same environment with the same mindset. And a lot of the tools, you don't have to use them all. This is the whole thing about the Perform methodology in the Perm book is you first make an assessment. Where are we right now? Where are we thriving? In which of those areas we actually doing quite well? And if we're not, can we get some inspiration from people over 50 founders like Anna, who's out there in the trenches doing it for a number of years, and what actually really worked for them? What are the strategies that really work for them? So hopefully you can get some inspiration to build your team even better than it is right now, and focus on performance, focus on culture, focus on the team, on all these areas that are important. So If you are interested, go check out the webpage. And if any of you who's watching and listening on the podcast right now is interested to meet some of these guys and to be part of this community, just drop a comment and we'll send you a link to a private Facebook group filled with founders like these guys here, and everybody's there supportive. Everybody's chipping in, sharing advice. It's all about growing together. It's about building this community of entrepreneurs in New Europe. Not just entrepreneurs. There's a lot of consultants, professionals, and so on. But it's really all about helping each other to build better companies. So just drop a comment that you want to be part of the group, and I'll make sure to send you a private link. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Anna, Cristobal, for being part of this. And see you next week again for another exciting Perform panel discussion live.
Thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.